All right. Get into some questions. This is a question that actually came, a very similar question that I had when I had Tony on. And most of these questions, because I said these questions are for Leif coming on the podcast, so most of them are directed at you, and I'll chime in or whatever if I feel the need. But you like that? So here we go. First one. Leif, how often did you disagree with Jocko's commands? And how many times did you actually let him know? Also, how did you handle either situation? So there you go.
I disagree with Jocko every minute of every day. Listen, it's a great question. And look, Jocko and I are different people. We have different views of the world. We have, there were times when, your job was strategic and you're looking at the bigger strategic picture. My job was tactical. I'm looking at the tactical picture. Sometimes you can make a tactical decision that could impact the strategic mission. And it was very rare though that we ever had any kind of disagreement on those things. I think, there were a number of times that when, what I always liked about Jocko, and I think people look at you and think, oh, he's this big, intimidating guy. And I remember our commanding officer, actually, we were talking to him, and of course he loved our task unit, and he was like, yeah, you guys in Bruiser. He was talking to me and the Delta platoon commander, and said, you got to do what Jocko says, or he'll choke you out. And we were kind of laughing about that because we were training jiu-jitsu every morning. We're like, man, I've been choked out by Jocko hundreds of times. It's not even a threat anymore. But it was never, we never did what you said because it was fear or intimidation or like, we have to do what he says because he's in charge. What I always loved about you and your leadership was that I knew that I could push back on stuff and you were going to listen to me. And it was interesting for me to see that as, we built a relationship. I could come in and be like, hey, I think we ought to do this. And very rarely would you would never say like, no, do it this way because it's my way. But even very, very rarely would you say, sometimes you might be like, well, we want to go in this direction. Here's why we want to do this. But most of the time you would actually just say, hey, well, talk me through that. Okay, how's that going to work? And you would give me the opportunity and others in the platoon the opportunity to come up with a plan and kind of analyze it and look at it and give it a shot. And so that's what I always loved about that. I mean, a couple of disagreements that came up, for me, something that we talk about all the time, with our business echelon front, when we're talking to companies and leadership teams, going through the workup cycle. We always talk about it. People want to hire folks and just kind of let them run. And people want to say, hey, give them the opportunity to go out and succeed. And a lot of bosses want to kind of, we'll just, hey, I'm really busy, hire someone with experience, put them in position. You kept really, really tight reins on us. And initially that was super frustrating to me. I mean, I remember being in our mount training, military operations urban terrain training. For folks that don't know what that means, where we're in the mock cinder block city, and we talked about that on the podcast and talked about that often here for other folks at other podcasts. But that was, I wanted to plan these things. I'm the platoon commander, and I want to be in charge. I remember you saying, hey, we should do this, or let's plan it this way. And I remember wanting to kind of push back against that. And oftentimes, but I recognize, like, as we're going along, you're actually training me and giving me giving me the opportunity. You've done a whole bunch of these operations that I hadn't done any of those operations previously. So you were teaching me and mentoring me, and once we got to the battlefield, you just unleashed us to get after it. And a couple of times I do remember some pushback where you came up and gave me some direction, and where you said, hey, why don't you try this or do that? And one of those times in particular was when I was trying to get I remember a number of times, and one of them out in our desert training facility out at what we call land warfare, and I'm trying to get the platoon to pull back to a position, and we're trying to patrol out, and you gave me you told me to actually stop trying to put a bunch of detailed information out of the radio, like use verbal commands, do it this way, and I immediately my ego getting in the way. It was frustrating because the team wasn't doing what I wanted them to do. And
that's like step number one in the frustration. So my team isn't doing what I want them to do.
So automatically my meter's kind of starting to get pegged, and the red, like no one's listening to me. So when Jocko comes up to give me some direction of like, hey, you ought to do this, my immediate pushback is like, no, I'm not going to do that. And I didn't say that, but I was like, I kind of bristled a little bit. I remember kind of bristling at that, and I was like, okay, let me think about it. what do we, he hasn't told me wrong before. And I was like, let me give that a shot. He's like, okay, I'll do that. Use verbal commands, get everybody moving. And you do that over and over and over again throughout multiple training scenarios. And then on the battlefield as well, where that's what built up trust. So when you did tell me to do something, I was like, I'm going to give it a shot. And it worked.
Yeah.
It worked like
just
magic.
To expand on that a little bit, the verbal command thing is, so you get guys that, there's a bunch of people, you got a platoon. We'll just take this case. You got a platoon of 16 guys. They're in various terrain features. One guy's in a little ravine. One guy's up on a little knoll. Another guy's behind a shrub. So there's a little bit of dispersion with your troops, and you want to get them to do something. You want to get them to fall back, or you want to get them to muster where you are, and maybe the shooting stopped or whatever. But you want to control all these people at the same time. And so what you think is, hey, I'll just get on the radio. And I'll tell everyone, hey, everyone, I'm back about 100 meters back. There's a little piece of terrain sticking out. There's a rock by it. I'm behind that rock. And if you guys start peeling back here to the northwest at about 090 degrees, that's where you're flying me. Okay, so now what does that come across like on a transmission for a guy that's shooting a machine gun? He hears like, come back. That's what he hears. He doesn't hear anything. And you've given this long, complex direction, and what you really need is, hey, everyone, fall back here now. That's what they need to hear. And so then you do it, and you realize that now we have a thing in the SEAL teams where you pass the command, and so when you hear a loud verbal command, everyone passes it. Now everyone heard it, and now everyone comes back to your position. But this is the essence of, in the book Extreme Ownership, this is really the essence of simple. Like, it's simple, clear communications, and that's one of those things that once you learn it, you're like, yeah, if my team isn't doing what I want them to do, not that they don't want to, they don't even know what you want them to do, because you're giving it in such a complex way. I gave that counsel hundreds of times. Once I was running the training on the West Coast, I gave that counsel hundreds of times. Like, hey man, just tell everyone a simple command right now to get them to do something. So that holds true. And I'll tell you another situation where you kind of disagreed with me. And we were working with a company. I'm not going to mention the company's name. We were working with a company, and there was like a mid-level but a somewhat senior leader, and you didn't like him. And the reason you didn't like him because he wasn't really that competent. He had messed some things up, and his division was suffering a little bit. And you were kind of like, hey, Jocko, we should talk about getting this guy fired.
Well, it just wasn't that he was competent. His division was suffering. Like, they were like, hey, this guy is dragging us down. This is a major issue. And we were getting massive negative feedback that was impacting the team, particularly from a guy who was supposed to be, the knowledgeable guy that was able to groom and mentor the junior leaders, underneath him. I thought, man, why should they keep this guy? He's actually dragging the team down. And you said, well, strategically, if they get rid of this guy, it's gonna actually have some impact to the strategic mission they're trying to do. The senior leaders who are gonna maybe question what was going on there, right, if you remove a key leader from it.
So strategically, at that point in the company, that individual who was, again, we'll just say incompetent and also unliked, he had really, really good political and relationship connections with we'll say a parent company, but the people that controlled the funding. And so we could get rid of this guy, but all of a sudden, all these people that were funding this company, there was going to be problems. And I was like, hey, if we get rid of that guy, we're going to cut a lot of relationship cords. So we let's try and find a way to mitigate as much as we can. And we disagreed upon it, but basically, you fundamentally got the other leader in that division to figure out how to work with the guy and got him trained up, and then that guy took enough control that they mitigated the non-performer kind of out of the picture, and it worked out well.
And I think the lesson there is that, like I mentioned earlier, like, you can win the tactical battle and lose the strategic war, and you certainly don't want to do that. I think you got to recognize that whether it's terminating someone or making decisions, I think that's where we had, you had that strategic picture in mind, and I was focused a little more on the tactical side. So you got to keep. You can make the right tactical call and can have some real strategic consequences, that cascade and cause you a lot more problems. I think though that my true answer to this question on our most fundamental disagreement came on patches. And that was Jocko was understood as SEALs that we needed to be squared away. We wanted to be stormtroopers in TU Bruiser. That's what we wanted. We wanted to all look the same. We wanted to have squared away haircuts, squared away uniforms, everybody in the same gear. And that's hard for SEALs because SEALs often want to just kind of wear a mix and match of uniforms and kind of whatever gear they want to use.
They want to look cool, straight up.
Long hair, beards, all those things. You recognize that we needed to do that. And guys can get out of control when they have all these patches made that are like, look at these cool guy. I got patches all over me, and that's SEALs are some of the best, the biggest offenders of that. So Jocko was like, no patches.
Yeah, and just to expand on this a little bit more, but strategically from the Army, from the Marine Corps, and the Marine Corps, when they look at someone that's not in a squared away uniform, they think to themselves, hey, if this guy can't even wear a squared away uniform, how can he operate out in the battlefield? And that's what they think, and good for them, because it's a true statement. If you've got someone that can't mind some details and look squared away, then how can I expect them to do their job well? Now, in the SEAL teams and really in all soft communities, there's some absolute laxity when it comes to uniform requirements. That's why you see pictures of guys doing this, dressing out a uniform and mixing and matching uniforms. It's the way it is. And you know what? In my deepest knowledge, I know that you can have, and this is a classic military quote, is an inspection ready platoon has never passed combat, and a combat-ready platoon has never passed inspection. It's a commonly known thing that I understand and I get. But especially we're new in the battle space. We're just showing up here. We got Marines and Army soldiers and senior leadership that we're going to be working for. And I say, okay, we're going to make a good. This is the base. Fundamentally, we're going to make a good first impression. We're going to look squared away, which means we're going to have squared away haircuts. We're going to blouse our boots, and we're going to wear a normal looking uniform, which means we don't have crazy looking patches that make us look different, right? Because that's the thing that you're saying. The thing that you're saying is, look at me. That's what you're saying. Look at me. I'm cool. That's what a patch is. It's, hey, look at me. I'm special. And obviously I don't like that attitude. And so here we go back to the patches.
So when you told me, we were on board with everything, on the same page, and we saw eye to eye on so many things. Certainly me and the Delta Platoon Commander with you, absolutely. And but that was, I don't know why, but for one reason, we got together and I was like, we designed our own patches. We're like,
when you say we,
patches.
You mean you and the Delta Platoon
Commander? Me
Commander.
and the Delta Platoon Commander, me and the Delta Platoon Commander said, we're going to design some patches for Tasking and Bruiser. And I don't know why, if we just had an idea that this was going to be a historic unit, this was going to be something we wanted to be a part of, but we felt like we needed Tasking and patches, and I felt like you secretly wanted us to have them, even though you told us not to do it. So I was like, we designed these patches. One of them, I used the Lord Humongous from the Road Warrior for one, and the other one we had a big cow skull, and it was. So we had these two patches. We went out. We had them made. So I secretly had them shipped. I secretly had them distributed to both platoons, and we keep them in our shoulder patch pocket. And we'd be in a convoy ready to roll out. Jocko would come out, see everybody off, shake hands with everybody, and we'd be launched on the operation. And we'd come up over the radio. My leading pet officer would come up over the radio and be like, patches on. So everyone would pull the patches out, slap the patches on, and then although we got busted when there was an embedded reporter with one of the units we were working with, and there were some photos of patches, so we got busted. Although you didn't come down on me hard like that. You just let it slide.
I just, because you mentioned that we had this conversation on text the other day, and I just pulled out my phone to read this text back and forth. We were just talking about, you were basically saying, hey, let's not forget you didn't want us to wear patches, and then I wrote back to you, hey, don't forget that while I was outwardly disapproving, inside I was smiling, knowing that a little rebelliousness is important for leaders to possess, and that esprit de corps trumps compliance and uniformity. Oh, that's an actual text conversation we were having. That's kind of jacked up, isn't it? But my point is, like obviously it meant something to you, and it was bringing the team together. It's like when you go through boot camp and the drill instructors will let you get away with something because they know it's unifying the team, and that's what it was for me. It's like, okay, and also how much leadership capital am I going to expend? Because even though I just made it sound like it was a big deal and also we had earned a good reputation. It wasn't a first impression anymore. It was like the impression had been made, and the impression was solid. And so now it's like, oh yeah, these guys. Oh yeah, they're actually a unit identifying patch. So anyways.
we gave that patch to the brigade commander when we departed, which was awesome. And I'm very proud to say that there's not a whole lot up on the wall in the Jocko gym, but in the garage there. But there is a TU Bruiser patch.
There is indeed,
with Lord Humongous represents.
There's a 7 Echo from my Echo platoon at Team 7, and there's a SEAL Team 1 patch. I mean a sticker. That's my wall of glory, stapled to the wall. Awesome.